To join us here at the open of the program at our SiriusXM booth on Radio Row at CPAC is the one and only Jason Miller. He was the communications director for the Trump campaign in 2016. He ran comms for the transition and is still close with President Trump. Jason, thanks for joining us here on Breitbart News Saturday.
Matt, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Wow, what a fancy production. And you have a suit on. Folks obviously at home or driving can't see, but is that a new suit? You look good, Matt.
It's a brand new suit. I haven't worn this one before. So, we got the full production team here from SiriusXM and from Breitbart. We're broadcasting live, too, on our Breitbart Facebook Live. So we're carrying this live there for a special show. So Jason, President Trump just got back from North Korea. Or from Hanoi, Vietnam, with his meeting with the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. He walked away from the table. What do you think about that? He turned down a bad deal. I think that's a good thing.
Well, I agree with you, and I think the president continues to defy expectations. And the buildup with the media as President Trump was heading to Hanoi was that he might potentially take a bad deal, or is he going to go in there and do something that the foreign policy skeptics are going to freak out about? And watching all of the so-called foreign policy geniuses, the folks who over the last 20 years have gotten us into this bad spot, who are inclined to hate President Trump over every little thing that he does, we're actually praising him on the back half of the week. Said he didn't get the concessions that we wanted, didn't get the commitment to de-nuke, as the president would say, and so he walked away from the deal, and that's good. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, so interestingly, I think it sends a message not just to North Korea, but to the rest of the world as well. You see these ongoing negotiations with China over a trade deal. President Trump isn't just going to take a deal to take a deal.
So the important point here, and actually I'll tell you a very brief story from when I worked for the president during the campaign. And at one point we were talking about negotiations and what goes into it. And he made the comment to me, in real estate, you don't wait until you're at the 45th floor of construction to decide if the building is going to be steel or concrete. You need to decide at the front end, is this going to be a good deal or a bad deal? And sometimes you have to just walk away. So as we see the negotiations going on with China, we see what's going on with North Korea, with Kim this past week, President Trump wants to get a good deal, and he's not going to settle for something that's inferior.
So one of the biggest, the other major foreign policy fight that's going on right now is what's going on down in Venezuela. President Trump has been very critical of Maduro in the socialist regime that we see there. But what do we think about what's going to happen there? How do you think that plays out with Venezuela?
So with Venezuela, I think the administration has taken an approach of very strong sanctions, letting Maduro know that we're not going to allow his tyrannical regime to continue to hurt the Venezuelan people. I did like the effort this week by Senator Rubio, and we saw the administration come out last night saying they're looking at extending TPS status to Venezuelans who are fleeing the country.
Rubio's been pretty tough as of late. I got to give him a little bit of credit on Venezuela and on China as well. I tell you, that 80-page report on China was something else.
Senator Rubio has been very impressive, and I'm glad to see the administration taking the same stance on TPS status for Venezuelans. I think that's very important. But this is Venezuela's right in our backyard. This is important for us to go and send the message. We're not going to allow this type of political persecution and these tyrannical dictatorships to exist right here. And so I'm glad to see the administration being tough on this.
So in the case of, one of the things that's a common thread between all of these things is, so in Venezuela you have a socialist regime, in China you have a communist regime, and same thing in North Korea. So we've seen every time that socialism or communism is attempted anywhere in the history of the world, it always fails. But that's one of the major themes I think we're seeing emerge here this year at CPAC is this debate that it's a pushback from the conservative movement against this leftist takeover, this socialist takeover of the Democrat Party. You're seeing on the Democrat side of the aisle people who are openly embracing socialism despite the harm it causes to the public. What do you think about that? What do you think about this leftist lurch of the Democrat Party?
I think in a lot of ways it's a reaction to the continued divide between the haves and the have-nots, not just that we've seen here in the U.S., but that we've seen globally. And there are different tacks that you can take, as we've seen with President Trump, bringing his approach to Washington. I was going to fight back and try to break down the traditional norms that are is essentially promoting this entrenched bureaucracy. And what we've seen on the left is they've gone a completely different direction, where they've decided they're going to go and try to destroy democracy and capitalism as we know it, and go for essentially a give it all away for free, or take it from one group of people and give it to another group of people. And what we've seen with this Green New Deal and AOC and some of the rest of the folks on the left who've gone completely off the deep end here is they want a fundamental breakdown of our very society.
Yeah, by the way, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has a standing invitation to come on Breitbart News Saturday. We've reached out to her team. We've offered her the opportunity. We hope she will come on the program and defend her radical socialist ideas. As of yet, there's no reply. But the point is that...
I do got to tell you, I looked on predictit.com, and they had a 0% chance of AOC coming and joining you on the show. I know it'd be great for ratings, but...
I don't think she could defend what she's put forward as idea. Look, okay, the Green New Deal is one of the most insane. It's not just a radical plan; it's insane. They want to eliminate the internal combustion engine. That means the entire American auto industry is gone. I mean, I think this is like a gift to Trump that all these Democrat presidential candidates are signing on to this.
It really is, and if you look at a macro look at the 2020 reelect. I think President Trump's State of the Union speech from a few weeks ago really in a lot of ways was the first campaign speech for him for 2020. And you look at where the Democrats have gone, the radical left, and how they've shifted this. They are doing everything they can to reelect President Trump. And it's notable that they've so hijacked the Democratic Party that you have, what, half dozen of these presidential contenders who have now embraced, and then some have walked it back a little bit, these radical policies like the Green New Deal. And this is going to be such a stark contrast between what President Trump is trying to do here in Washington, whether it be with reducing taxes and regulation and the strong foreign policy and conservative judges on the Supreme Court, and banning cows, which shows just the complete divide.
Like, how are you going to ban cows? It just doesn't make any sense. In terms of so again, folks, this is Breitbart News Saturday here on Sirius XM 125, the Patriot Channel. I'm Matt Boyle, our Washington political editor. Our guest here is Jason Miller, former communications director for President Trump. We're broadcasting from CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference, hosted by the American Conservative Union at the Gaylord National Resort and Conference Center in National Harbor, Maryland. We are about an hour or so away from hearing directly from President Trump. We're going to carry that speech live right here on Sirius XM 125, the Patriot Channel. So in that State of the Union speech, Jason, President Trump made a pretty bold promise that America will never become a socialist nation, and it shouldn't have to be a bold promise, but the point is that when you have all these different leaders on the Democrat side of the aisle, in fact, Bernie Sanders is in some polls polling ahead of the rest of the Democrat candidates for president, openly embracing socialism, and it has to be a bold promise like that. What do you make of the president's promise that the United States will never become a socialist country?
I'm glad to hear it, and I think the genius thing that President Trump did was to elevate the broader issue of socialism to the forefront. You know, as a Republican, as someone who's worked on campaigns for the last 20 years and obviously helped President Trump in 2016, what this current group of Democrats have done, they've raised their hand and taken ownership of some of the labels we've tried to put on Democrats over the past 20 years. So as we've said that former President Obama or former Secretary Hillary Clinton, pinning them as socialist, it didn't really stick in any of those elections. But this current group of Democrats are actually embracing it and saying, we are proud to be socialists. We want to break down the society that has made America so great. And that is such a clear distinction. The genius part, though, from President Trump was to elevate that at the national stage. And so anyone who didn't know about the dangers of socialism or see the connection of where that takes you, i.e. Venezuela, they know now.
So now AOC is, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is walking around saying she has a list of Democrats that she wants to primary and remove if they don't support her agenda. I think that's just fantastic. I think she should publish the list. She should put it out there as much as possible. What do you think about this? What do you think about this list that AOC is walking around with?
Oh, I love it. It's fantastic. I mean, the best fight clubs are the Democratic internal politics fight clubs. I will tell you one other thing.
They try to keep it in the family. They try to keep it from going out into the public. Republicans are much more willing to like kind of duke it out in public a little bit. The Democrats try to keep it behind closed doors, but when it does break out, it's just glorious.
So here's, I had dinner the other night with a big group, and there was a Democratic lawmaker that was there who actually said that one of the big divides right now in the Democratic Party is the fact that the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and some of the other far leftists that are the Democratic freshman class are actually smaller in number than some of the more conservative, some of the more mainstream Democrats who came into this freshman class. And Democrats aren't happy that she has completely hijacked not just that freshman class, but you look at the cover of Rolling Stone. Right. I'm sure you've already framed it. Has Speaker Pelosi autographed it for you yet?
I wish she would. So again, Speaker Pelosi has a standing invitation to come on the program too. So if she wants to explain what she's doing.
Here's a key thing for people at home to realize: that Democrats are fighting mad about how AOC is hijacking their party. I think she's going to see some competition in her own primary this next year. I think they're going to come after her. They have to be careful because she could.
They might redistrict her out of existence, right? Like, I mean, aren't we coming up on redistricting in New York? Maybe Nancy Pelosi makes a call up to Cuomo and says, "Hey, can you take care of this for me?" Right? Like, and maybe they'll do it. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe they'll make her much more based
go away
in Westchester, where she grew up, or move her out to Long Island.
So another big discussion item that we're seeing here at CPAC that we've been talking about a lot over the last couple of months here in the wake of what happened to the governor of Virginia is the issue of abortion, and I think that's important that is back in the forefront here because it sometimes is an issue that isn't talked about enough. I don't think the issue of life, and what the Democrats have embraced. We saw Ralph Northam's comments where, you know, they would keep a child who's already born comfortable until they make a decision whether or not they want to kill that child. That is infanticide. It's not even. The Democrats have embraced for a while. I mean, they used to say, "Oh, nobody supports late-term abortion." Nobody, but now they're openly admitting that they're even more radical than that. Now, Governor Northam in Virginia, who's still the governor of Virginia, refuses to resign, came under fire for another scandal, which was the photograph of on his yearbook page of a person in blackface and another one in a Klansman outfit.
Which he defended by saying he actually had done blackface when he dressed up as Michael Jackson and did the moonwalk. So the first time in PR history, someone's tried to get out of a jam by embracing Michael Jackson and proclaiming they can do the moonwalk.
Right, and admitting to wearing blackface another time, but not in that picture. And so, and he talked about like putting shoe polish on his face, like as if it was like a normal thing to do. It's not a normal thing to do. I've never put shoe polish on my face. But the point is that all the calls for his resignation came over the and rightfully so, over the racist photographs in his yearbook and his horrible defense of that. But Democrats are okay with his position on infanticide.
Right. And Matt, I think you hit the nail on the head with this one. This really is a debate over infanticide, which is so far outside the mainstream that virtually nobody embraces that horrific. I mean, it's disgusting. And it's literally taking a live person and killing them. It's
in New York, they just passed a law too, and this is what kind of preceded the whole Virginia thing, was the law that allows abortion up until birth, right? Like literally up until and during birth. I mean, somebody can get abortion. It's just so radical.
And I think this is why going into 2020, the issue around Supreme Court justices continue to be at the forefront. I think we'll see President Trump talk a lot about the types of folks that he's appointed to the bench, not just at the Supreme Court, but also as we talk about in the lower courts and the complete makeover, setting us up for a generation of more conservative leadership there. This is going to be a big debate going into 2020. It has Democrats in a very tough position. They don't know how to handle it, and because infanticide is just so outside of the mainstream, it doesn't sell, and it makes them look like the coastal extremists that so often they're pegged as.
Right. And so speaking of Supreme Court justices, obviously two of the biggest successes of this administration are Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh. The Democrats did everything they could. The Neil Gorsuch confirmation was fairly smooth. With Brett Kavanaugh, it was not. It was a nasty fight in the lead up to the midterm elections. The Democrats did everything they could. The media did everything they could to try to take him down. They lied. They put out inaccurate information that we know is inaccurate. They put out accusations that we know weren't true. The media has started this year in just as bad a way as they ended last year with the Covington Catholic story, then the Jussie Smollett story. BuzzFeed, right? Like, so we've got all of these different and what do you think needs to happen? Because this is another thing that we've had a lot of discussions about. I was on a panel about it the other night here at CPAC. What do you think needs to happen for the media to get back on track, to regain trust, to stop this just complete carnage of the truth?
This is a good question. I think it's a two-parter here. I mean, the first being that politically motivated, clickbait-driven fake news has no place in American society. It destroys lives. It is terrible, and we've seen where people have done it intentionally and with actual malice. We saw this with Justice Kavanaugh. We saw it with the Covington kids. We saw what happened with the faulty reporting with BuzzFeed and numerous other. I mean, the Jussie Smollett story was absolutely mind-blowing. How that literally you had Democratic candidates for president rushing in and embracing his position even before they knew any of the facts.
I think Cory Booker and Kamala Harris both called it a modern day lynching or a modern something.
And it was complete fake news. I think that there's going to have to be a reckoning with some of the folks who've participated in that being held accountable for their actions, particularly where there's been malice involved and where they knew what they were doing was wrong. Then also I think there's going to have to be a real reckoning within the media community to take responsibility for some of this and clean up their own act and say we're not going to stand for or rally around bad actors. And this, because Matt, you and I both know there are tons of high-quality, good journalists. And
there are a lot of them, a lot of good people throughout the media.
Show up to work every day and check their bias at the door and go in and just want to report the news. And those are some of my favorite reporters and people I enjoy working with. And there are people who might have slight biases to the left or to the right, and everyone's going to have their own opinions. But the deliberate attempt at politically motivated, clickbait-driven fake news is disgusting.
See, I think that the answer to this is a little bit different than the whole idea of check your bias at the door. My view is that the people in the media should just be open about what their biases are. In that, and this was the kind of the point that I was making on the panel, is that if you, every single one of us are human beings. We're not robots, right? We can't make decisions via an algorithm, right? So our experiences, our views, etc., all inform our decisions. So every decision we make in the media, in an editorial capacity, whether it be what stories we cover, to what we don't, to who we interview, to which quotes we use, to what's in the headline, to how it's framed, all are informed by our views and experiences and our biases. And so my view is, and this is the way that kind of Breitbart is built, is that why not just be open and honest with your audience about what it is that we believe, and then as such, you can start to build that trust with your audience. And there's places on the left that do this too. The Intercept is probably a good example of this. I think that when they claim to be objective, when we know that they're not, that's the lie that they're built on. Do you think that will ever change? That they'll, because the objectivity thing started in the 60s, right? Like, they weren't always claiming that. There are all the different newspapers out there, like the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. I mean, that was a Democrat newspaper. The Arizona Republic was a Republican newspaper, right? Like, right, was right. Like, but the point is that these different historically media outlets were open about this, right? Like, then they all of a sudden came up with this theory that they should start claiming to be objective, even though no human being can be objective, sometime in the mid 20th century, and I think that's where the media went off the rails.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Now, I would also say with both President Trump and even with George W. Bush, when you look at their electoral or their wins, their presidential wins, the media did not view them as legitimate winners. People forget this. We go into the beginning part of 2001, after the whole hanging chads and the Supreme Court decision, that up until 9/11, President Bush, former President Bush, was treated horribly by the media. He was not viewed as a legitimate president, and they attacked him every day. And we've seen ever since President Trump won that I would say most members of the media do not view him as a legitimate president, and it shows. They wear it on their sleeve. So first the excuse was the popular vote. They wanted to get away from the Electoral College and go to the popular vote. Then it was Comey. That's the only reason why President Trump won. Then it was the Russia hoax. And it's always some excuse, one after another, where you see this blending by many members of the media, as well as the Democratic Party, to try to paint President Trump as an illegitimate president. Whereas the rest of the country is looking at it and I think is liking what they're seeing with regard to the economy and the national security, what he's doing with the Supreme Court. These are some pretty damn impressive things that President Trump has done so far in his first couple of years.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask about the wall. So President Trump has obviously declared a national emergency along the U.S. border with Mexico. He's going to use a variety of executive actions in addition to the congressional appropriations that they gave. They gave him a small pittance from Congress, but then the rest is going to be made up for through these other funds. The ultimate one is the national emergency declaration, but there's a couple of other ones that lead up into it. What do you think about the president's decision to declare the national emergency? How do you think this plays out? How important is it that he actually get that wall up going into re-election?
Well, continuing the building of the wall is very important. They've started in some small places. Obviously, this will give him billions of additional money to go and work on it. And I think some of the different solutions they're coming up with now about how to be a little more smarter on the construction of it. They can get a lot more of it built. But I'm frustrated that Republicans didn't do more in the first 2 years of President Trump's presidency to go and get this going. We had the House, we had the Senate, we had all of the mechanisms and ways to go and do it. But here's the reality: is you have a lot of folks who are up there on Capitol Hill who, quite frankly, don't support what President Trump is doing. And they're ignoring their constituents. They're ignoring the broader public. They're ignoring the crisis we have at our southern border. So I'd say I'm pretty ticked off that we wasted a lot of the first 2 years. And I think even you could point to some specific people that were in the White House to start off the beginning of President Trump's administration who should have done more to go and get that done. And I wish they had. But now as we talk about the here and now, I'm glad that President Trump declared the emergency because it is. There have been dozens of other national emergencies have been declared by other presidents. And
there's many of them still on the books. I think the first one that was ever declared, which was by Jimmy Carter, is still on the books.
Right. And I think anyone who's saying, well, what about the next president? What might they do? What might they declare? Guess what? They're going to declare national emergencies as they see fit. And what would you go and say to angel moms or families of people who are impacted by illegal immigration and crimes committed by people who've entered the country illegally? They don't care about what happens 6, 8, 10 years down the road. They want to make sure their families are protected today. They wish they could go back in time, and they wish the previous presidents who sat on their hands and didn't do anything about this had done it, so maybe their family members would still be alive.
All right. Well, Jason Miller, sir, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us here on Breitbart News Saturday here at CPAC. And any message to the conservative movement? What does the troops here at CPAC need to be doing going into 2020?
I think today we're going to see a very fired up and animated speech from President Trump. This is where he's absolutely at his best. You can tell here at the conference that there's already a certain buzz in the air. You can see it with the Secret Service people around. Everyone's checking their watch and their phones. And how many more minutes do we have until President Trump is here? But this is speaking to the home crowd. This is to fire up the base. This is also, I think it's a good message for the president to see that he has thousands of people who are enthusiastic foot soldiers ready to go out and help him win re-election in 2020. And just, it's exciting to be here.
All right. Well, Jason Miller, sir, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us here on Breitbart News Saturday.
It's an honor, Matt.